So welcome back to Thinksipwrite. This is episode 62. And we're, it's not going to be it's going to be a happy episode. We're always happy.
I think this is going to be an inspiring episode. I think this person had a huge impact on, I think you wrote an article about this for one of the things that, what was the paper that you did? International article, right?
Yeah, a newspaper in India, one of the biggest newspapers over there, asked me to write an article because they saw a post that I put up on social media.
And I think you explained it so well and so beautifully, and
you cried.
I did. I got teary-eyed. I couldn't help it.
Well, and if you follow me on social media, I will put a post with a link to the article, if not the article itself, when it goes up on Sunday. So this will be a day in advance.
Right.
But
so everybody's probably wondering what we're talking about or who we're talking about.
They already saw the title.
Oh.
But this is the late Stanley.
Stanley, the great Stanley.
Now this actually takes us back to what Thinksipwrite started as. It started as, just the whole writing thing, and he was my biggest inspiration from a child. He's basically why I got into wanting to read and character development and plots and different stories and stuff. And, I mean, the guy's a legend.
Yeah. I think, and that's the thing, I think a lot of people can relate with you with that. I was never a big comic book reader, so I really didn't, I knew about him, but I didn't really actually start to know about all the movies and all the characters until I started dating you almost 20 years ago.
And then you were enlightened.
Almost 20 years ago.
Things got better for you.
Oh, stop it. I became a big nerd, a big comic book nerd. I actually know a lot about comic books, and I've actually kicked your butt in a couple of Marvel things.
There were a couple of trivias you beat me in, which I let her win.
Oh, whatever. But I just, you know what? And a lot of people are like upset and stuff like that, but he was 95. He is leaving like so much, like, I don't even know how to explain it, like so much, not just history.
Just a legacy.
A legacy, but I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, he's a legend and, he's done this and he's done that. That's so true. But he also opened the doors, like you were saying in the article that you wrote. I mean, it didn't matter your religion, your race, your set, like what you were. Like, he embraced those characters and like...
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, one of the popular things on Netflix now, of course, they both got canceled, but Luke Cage and Iron Fist.
Yeah. They got canceled probably because they're bringing it into one.
They're probably bringing it into one. That's my theory. But he created that whole... He put that whole Power Man Iron Fist together. With where you had this black and this white guy who were totally different backgrounds, completely different upbringings, and they were able to get along. And then the funny thing is, they end up marrying. The black guy in the comics ends up marrying this white girl, and he ends up marrying this black girl.
Jessica Jones, right?
Yeah, in the comics, Luke Cage marries Jessica Jones, and
I know.
And Iron Fist ends up marrying Misty Knight. But it's really cool because he got into interracial things. He did not have any barriers.
But that's the thing. Like, I feel anything. Like that's what, like, with the Black Panther and like all this, like these movies that people want. They've always wanted like different cultures and different backgrounds, different views, right? Politically and he could bring that all together.
The whole thing behind his X-Men series from the beginning was these people look different. People judge them because they don't look the same.
Right.
And they end up becoming the most amazing heroes or villains in some cases.
Right.
But it's true to society. You can look like anything, and you could be a hero or a villain. And that's this message he tried to get across, and he made that.
It's basically not judging a book by its cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because somebody may look a certain way doesn't mean that they're not a spectacular person.
Right.
But just some of the things, like, what are one of your favorite, like, things about him? Like, obviously you read a lot of his comic books and stuff like that, but what would you say is one of your favorite moments or favorite things that you've ever read? Favorite character?
I would have to go overall. I think my favorite character growing up was, I mean, they were mostly Marvel characters, and I loved the DC characters, you know, and I still do.
And he was never that person too to shame or to like blast DC.
Well,
like,
he wrote for DC for a while.
But he never was that person though. He could have come to the other side and be like, "Oh, don't watch DC or don't do." No. He was never like that.
No, and he was well respected across those bounds.
And that's what's amazing.
You know, he made this mark where he was just an icon. It's like, and there's others that, you know, passed before him, like Jack Kirby and stuff like that. Bob Kane, who created Batman, they were legends too. But Stan Lee's legend because he got to the age that he got to, and now you're seeing all these Marvel movies done right on the movie and on the screen, and his characters have come to life. He has become a legend where people like you who didn't know anything about Stan
fell in love
Lee
with him,
knew who he was from the cameos.
I mean, look at our kids.
Yeah.
Our kids like would watch, and that's what I think. Like, cameos were like the best, and that's what the kids are like. Well, what are we gonna do now? Where are the cameos gonna be?
Stan Lee was a brilliant man. I'm pretty sure that we are going to see him at least once or twice more. He's filmed stuff in advance before.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And even if he isn't there physically, he is there in some form.
Yeah.
He
had kids, correct, or no?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think a son and a daughter, and I don't know how many. I know he's got grandkids and everything.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's so amazing.
He passed his legacy on.
And it's funny because every like just normal random person like us, like normal people, to like main celebrities and people just coming together and just like speaking so highly of him, like fans. And he would always say, like, these people are coming up to me and they're telling me, like, that they love me and that they appreciate me. It's like, you saw him at one of the Comic-Con. You met him, right?
Actually, well, I asked him who his favorite comic book villain, and I specifically said, favorite comic book villain, Marvel, DC, or anything. Mm-hmm. And he said Dr. Doom. Without a doubt, Dr. Doom. He didn't hesitate. He was on it. You know, and that was, I mean, he was well into his 80s at that point when I asked him that. But it was really cool, and he was down to earth, and you know, he was one of those guys that you could see sitting around with, whether you were talking about comics or not, just sharing stories. You know, and he had, aside from the comic book stuff, he had a very interesting story himself.
Well, I think it's actually pretty interesting that I didn't know. I don't know if you knew this, but he started writing out obituaries.
Yeah.
Back in the day, right? Before he even got into comics, or
he was writing obituary. He was born in 22.
It's so funny though, like.
Yeah, he was born in 1922, and you know, in his prime, you know, he's 20. It was the Second World War. He went away to war, and he was a journalist in the war. He was writing obituaries for the papers, and he was over there, and he saw what was going on during World War II, and he basically came up with Captain America and the Submariner.
That was the very first thing, right? Was Captain America his first character?
I don't know if Captain America was his first, but it was. Yeah, there were a couple.
So Captain America was his first big break. A week into his job at the Timely Comics, Lee got the opportunity to write a 2-page Captain America comic. He wrote it under the pen name Stan Lee, which became his legal name, and titled Captain America. What is it? Foils and the Traitors' Revenge. His first full comic strip would come Captain America issue 5, published in, August 1st, 1941. So that was his first.
And what you mentioned was his pen name became Stan Lee. He was born Stanley Lieber. You know, Jewish guy, grew up, and he was fascinated with, he wanted hope for the troops during World War II. And before that. You know, for all the turmoil, he wanted people to see the positive side of other people. And he created...
And that's what we need, I feel like, today as a society.
Especially.
That's what we need, like, just to... I feel that's what brings people together.
Yeah.
When you go to the movies and you, like, watch these movies, like, you just
Right.
see people come together and they're really enjoying it. And
You could be Islam, Christian,
Yeah.
black, white,
Jewish, Asian, like, it doesn't matter.
Whatever. A Republican or Democrat.
Yeah.
And you can go and you can all see the same movie.
Yeah.
And you can all come out of that movie and
Going,
agree on one
wasn't that
thing.
amazing?
It was an awesome movie.
Yeah.
And that's what it was all about. He was a positive influence on society. You know, I get a little misty-eyed, a little bit, writing him. You know, I mean, I write because of him, basically.
Right.
I read because I grew up on his things, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, there's not many people like that in the world. And the people that are like that in the world, you don't hear a whole lot about, you know?
Well, I have some fun facts about
All right,
him,
go.
which I thought was so crazy to read these things. So, in his adult life, his wife, Joni...
Sneaking peeks, yeah.
cut his hair. His whole, like, ever since they got married, she cut his hair.
Fun fact. Author Rick Pepito gets his hair cut.
Well, let's not talk, because right now it looks
No, I look like I rolled out of a gutter right now.
I
You
just
do.
hit it worse.
Seriously?
But no, she cut his hair his whole adult life.
Mm-hmm.
His mom was his biggest influence. She was always, as a child, he loved reading Mark Twain and, like, all these different, like, authors and stuff like that. But she was, like, his biggest, I guess, supporter. And we'll always tell him, like, you're a brilliant child. You're a brilliant kid. And I think that's where it starts.
Fun
is
fact.
in the house.
Fun
like,
fact.
With your kids.
Author Rick Pepito was inspired by his mom, who always positively reinforced what he did and always had a critique for him.
But that's what I mean. Like, I feel
There's
like
a lot
that's...
of similarities here. Maybe when I'm 95 and I pass, you know, a lot of people
You
will
will
be
leave a legacy.
Pepito. He was that
Well, you
guy.
will leave a legacy. You're leaving 2 children, right?
Well, yeah,
Right?
I mean, yeah.
But I feel like I think that's where it stems. That's where it starts, is in the household with your kids. Because that's where their
Absolutely.
confidence comes from. That's like, you know, where things just start. They look at your behavior. Like, kids are paying attention to you 24/7, like, all the time. Sorry. I keep going on. Did you know he worked with Dr. Seuss?
I did not.
They worked together.
Dr. Seuss's real name is Theo Lysick.
Yep. They worked as a playwright in the training film division in Queens with 8 other men, including a few who went on to be very famous. And they named, like, certain cartoonists, the one creator of the Addams Family. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So these are the other guys that he actually worked alongside with.
You know what? I wonder if now I know Disney owns Marvel right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Stan Lee and Walt Disney ever crossed paths?
Ooh.
I think that's a question we leave to you guys to research. We're going to research it
That's
ourselves.
pretty good.
But I mean, think about it. All the impact that both of those men had, and Dr. Seuss and them.
But there's a lot of
would think they
conspiracies
crossed.
with Walt Disney, isn't there?
We should do an episode on that.
We have to.
But
I think we should.
there's a lot of conspiracy with everything. You know.
Mm-hmm. So did you know the whole story with the Hulk?
Oh wait.
Do you know the
which
story?
part? Which part?
The original color of the Hulk?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me see if I remember this correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Let's see how big of a fan you are. Let's see.
he had to go because of the way that printing was back then.
Mm-hmm.
He had to go with a gray color. It was gray because it was all grayscale. But then they wanted that to stand out, and they changed it to
Very
green.
close. But no, the character was supposed to be gray, but according to Lee, the printer had a hard time keeping the color consistent. So, as of the issue number 2, Lee wrote, with no explanation, he turned green.
Right.
Because they couldn't keep up with the green, I guess, back then, with the printers.
But the funny thing is, he was such an intelligent man that later on he decided to correct that and go back and say, because people were like, what happened? This was a gray Hulk. He's green now.
Yeah.
He went back and he said that there was another personality of the Hulk.
Right, and then he
And
created
the
another
Gray
character,
Hulk
right?
Came back.
How many colors are there?
There's gray, green. Well, of that character, of Bruce Banner, it was gray and green.
Now, I wonder, though, when what's the Red Hulk? Like,
That's a different character altogether.
But do you think that came from, like, okay, well, I did gray and green, why not come up with a red guy?
Yeah, and I'm not sure Stan Lee actually came up with the Red Hulk. I think that was after he had left.
So did you know that actually, this is what I found out the other day. I was just listening to something because, you know, everybody was talking about Stan Lee and it's like all over. But there was like the most famous or most influential characters that he created. Now, Captain America was not on that list. Do you know why?
Why? Oh, because he's not worldwide?
No, he was not the one. He wasn't the only one that created Captain America. It was another guy with him.
It was Jack Kirby.
Right.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Right. So it wasn't just his creation.
Well, and that's in a lot of the circumstances it is.
So that was not in like the top 10.
He was still a co-creator though, and he was the surviving co-creator.
Right.
So after Kirby passed.
But you can't specifically say it was just him.
No,
right?
it wasn't. Another interesting fact about the Hulk, which, do you remember, now, of course, we're showing our age here, especially me, but there was a live-action Hulk in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, my God, yeah.
It was Bill Bixby was Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I watched that growing up.
But Bill Bixby was not Bruce Banner. Bill Bixby was David Banner.
Right. Now, you know why they changed the name. Because it was too feminine.
They said that the name Bruce was too feminine or too gay to have as a hero character.
Which is ridiculous.
Back then, he had to change the name, so he changed it to David Banner.
Right.
Which is interesting because there never was a David Banner in the comics. It was Bruce David Banner.
I don't get that, though.
But in the movie, the Ang Lee movie, which I hated, the one with the Hulk, with Eric Bana as the Hulk. His father, who was played by Nick Nolte in that movie, went by the name David Banner. So they kind of tied that in a little bit, which was kind of interesting. And everybody always tributed.
Right.
You know.
Okay, here's another fun fact. You would probably, I don't know what you would do if this happened. His wife destroys his prized typewriter. According to Lee, I wonder what kind of argument this was. According to Lee, during an argument, Joni destroyed the typewriter he used to write the first issue for characters including Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four. This happened before eBay, he wrote. Too bad I could have auctioned the parts and made a mint. So, what do you... I'm trying to think of what argument they probably could have had. She took his typewriter and destroyed it. That's my girl. What did he do?
Let me just tell you.
What did he do?
Take my laptop and destroy it.
What did he do?
Destroy you.
Okay, so then there's another thing. A fire destroyed his interviews and lectures. When Lee moved his family to Los Angeles, he set up a studio in the Van Nuys where he stored videotapes and his talks, interviews, along with commission, all that stuff. But there was a fire, and all those interviews and all those things that he did went gone. So, I mean, that would have been... It's
a shame because, we're in such a technological age now that all
everything
that stuff is backed up.
Yeah. His favorite Marvel film cameo was based on one from the comics. So it was...
Wait, let me guess.
Okay. Let's see.
Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
I remember seeing that, and that was one... It was...
The wedding.
It was the wedding of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. And Stan Lee tried to get into the wedding. And the guy at the wedding asked him, "Who are you? What's your name on the guest list?" And he said, "I'm Stan Lee." And the guy goes, "Yeah, sure you are, buddy.
Right.
Go away."
Right.
Well, that was actually in the comics.
Right.
And there were a lot of things.
But it was actually originally the story, that whole thing of them wedding. It was supposed to be him and Jack Kirby crashing the wedding.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's so fun. Like, that was just a couple of the facts that I found that I thought were interesting. There's so much more
One prediction I made with all these cameos, and the first cameo I had ever seen him in. Now, I knew he narrated, or he did the voice of Peter Parker in the 80s cartoon.
Did he?
Yes, in the 80s cartoon Spider-Man and Friends. that I grew up with, he did the voice. So I knew his voice, right? I've known his voice from when I was the youngest of kids, you know?
I think everybody knows that voice, though.
Now they do, but for the longest time they didn't. And I'll never forget when he cameoed in the movie Mallrats.
Oh my God!
And I forget the actor's name who was standing there, and they're standing there looking in the window.
I totally remember that.
They're standing there looking in the window, and the actor, you know, he comes up and he goes, you know, this reminds me of when I wrote that scene with Peter Parker and Mary Jane, and the actor standing next to him turns and he realizes that he's standing next to him, you know, and he goes, holy shit, and he goes, oh, Stan Lee. You know, and that was the first time I'd actually seen his face.
And this is what's funny is that when I watch it, I had no idea.
Yeah, and I knew right away.
That?
I was like, oh my God. I had the same reaction that the actor had on screen at that point, you know. And since then, he's been the king of cameos.
Yeah.
And I had said a few years ago, now, of course, this is the comic book nerd in me. I went, look, he's been in all the X-Men films, the Spider-Man films, all these other Marvel films. I'm like, if he is a character in the Marvel Universe, he's got to be the Watcher, because the Watcher can see into many different realities. And he can be there, and he can just blend in. And sure enough, what was it, Guardians of the Galaxy 2? It turned out he was sitting on a rock talking to the Watchers about what he's been doing all this time. And he actually specifically mentioned the time he was a FedEx guy, which I think was the Fantastic Four movie.
Yep.
So it's just...
But I was just thinking, too, like, you know, when you're watching the cameos in the movie theater, everybody from all ages, everybody's just like, when is he going to pop up? When is he going to pop up? And then when they see him, people just start clapping. Well, and like...
I think...
Dude, what's
the next... You're
Wait,
one or two
so,
more.
Okay, so what's the next movies that are coming? Do we have... new ones that are
You got Captain Marvel, and you've got the next Avengers movie. And I'm pretty sure he's got cameos in both of those.
Because they're already done, right?
Mm-hmm. So, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But, yeah, Stan Lee will live on, at least in some form.
I mean, I know that the kids, you know, and I hope they keep passing that generation.
Well, and
this is the thing now. This is the amazing thing now. Now it's not just comics. It's movies. Mm-hmm. Like, this is something that our kids or generations after that will be able to share with their kids throughout forever.
They're falling in love with these characters, and they're knowing about these characters, and whether or not the name Stan Lee
he will
passes on to the next generation, because people forget things, you know.
Yeah, but you will never like you look at who wrote Wizard of Oz. People know.
Frank Baum, but a lot of people don't know that. You know, but the thing is, it doesn't matter, because the legacy, the universe that he created will live on for years. I mean, my great-great-grandkids will still know who these characters are.
But that's what I mean, is that there's a movie universe to this now. I mean, it's a massive movie universe. But the problem is that I hope that it doesn't get lost at some point, because now Disney is part of it.
I think Disney's pretty good about...
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want it to be like future, like, great-great-grandkids going, oh, it's a Disney movie.
Well, we'll see.
Do you know what I mean?
So let us know your favorite Stan Lee memory.
We could totally keep talking about this for, like, ever.
That's why I got to wrap it up. Stan Lee memory, Stan Lee favorite Marvel character.
Maybe you've met him.
Tell us your story. Yeah. Make sure you hashtag thinksipwrite. And we'd like to hear predictions on where his legacy will go.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Yeah. And
Excelsior.
Cheers. Excelsior.